The morning sun filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Mark's Episcopal Church, leaving rainbow patterns across the worn wooden pews. I've been coming here every Sunday for 3 months now, ever since moving to Millbrook, Connecticut for my new job at the local high school. Teaching English in a small town was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to figure out who I was supposed to be. Before I continue the rest of the story, kindly do me a little favor. Please hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to comment your favorite part of the story below. I love reading your thoughts and reactions. They truly keep me going. Now, allow me to take a moment to appreciate you. Yes, you. Thank you for making us a 600-strong community. Each one of you is a pillar of strength, color, and courage. This journey wouldn't be possible without your love, your voice, and your presence. You are making the queer community proud, and I see every one of you. Your support is not just a number. It's a movement. It's light in the dark. It's love, loud and unashamed. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for standing with me. Thank you for being you. Now back to the story. My name is Ezra, and at 28, I was still trying to reconcile the faith I'd grown up with and the truth about myself I'd been running from for years. The hymns felt familiar on my tongue, but everything else about my life felt uncertain. That's when I first noticed him. He sat 3 pews ahead, always on the left side, always alone. Dark hair that caught the light. Broad shoulders that seemed to carry some invisible weight. When he stood for the hymns, his voice carried a rich baritone that made something in my chest tighten with longing I didn't want to name. I learned his name was Gabriel when Pastor Williams introduced the new youth minister to the congregation. Gabriel Morrison, recently graduated from seminary, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed to hold secrets. When our eyes met across the sanctuary that first Sunday, I felt something shift inside me, like recognition, like coming home, like danger all wrapped into one moment. "You're new to town," Gabriel said, appearing beside me as I lingered after service, pretending to study the bulletin board of community announcements. 3 months now, I replied, turning to face him properly. Up close, his eyes were green with flecks of gold, and there was a small scar through his left eyebrow that made him look both vulnerable and intriguing. "I'm Gabriel, but I guess you heard that already." His smile was self-deprecating, endearing. "Ezra Reed. I teach at the high school. English. How did you know?" "You were reading Whitman during the offertory. Most people just zone out or check their phones." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "You noticed that?" "I noticed a lot of things." The way he said it made my pulse quicken. "Would you like to get coffee? There's a place downtown that's actually decent." Walking beside him down Millbrook's tree-lined Main Street felt surprisingly natural. Gabriel had an easy way about him, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested in my answers. We talked about books, about teaching, about the challenges of small-town life. "What brought you to ministry?" I asked as we settled into a corner booth at Rosemary's Cafe. His expression grew thoughtful. "Honestly, I spent a long time thinking God and I weren't on speaking terms. Took me a while to realize maybe I was just afraid of what he might say. There was something in his voice, a weight, a history, that made me want to know more. But I also recognized the careful way he'd phrased it, the same kind of careful I've been practicing my whole life. St. Mark's hosted a community book club on Wednesday evenings, and somehow Gabriel had convinced me to join. We were reading the Brothers Karamazov, which seemed appropriate for a church setting, though the discussions often veered into territory that felt more philosophical than strictly religious. Ivan's rebellion against God isn't really about not believing, Mrs. Patterson, the retired librarian, was saying. It's about not being able to accept a world where innocent suffering exists. Gabriel leaned forward. But isn't doubt a form of faith? Wrestling with God rather than just accepting easy answers. I found myself speaking before I could stop myself. Jacob wrestled with the angel all night. He was wounded by it, but he also received a blessing. The room fell quiet, and I realized everyone was looking at me. But Gabriel's eyes held something like recognition, like he understood what I was really saying. After the meeting, we walked slowly to the parking lot. The October air was crisp, and our breath formed small clouds in the lamplight. "That was beautifully said tonight," Gabriel murmured. "I hope I didn't overstep. I know I'm still new here." "Ezra." He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Faith isn't about having all the right answers. It's about being brave enough to ask the hard questions." We stood there in the parking lot, the space between us charged with something I couldn't name. His eyes searched my face, and I wondered if he could see the longing I was trying so hard to hide. "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" he asked quietly. "Not coffee. Dinner." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I'd like that very much." Gabriel cooked for me the following Friday. His apartment above the church office was small but warm, filled with books and the smell of rosemary and garlic. He'd made pasta with homemade sauce, and there was wine. Good wine, not the cheap stuff I usually bought. "This is incredible," I said, taking another bite. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My grandmother. She said a man who couldn't feed people properly had no business trying to feed their souls." Sound like a wise woman. She's the one who helped me figure out that God's love is bigger than what some people try to make it. He paused, wine glass halfway to his lips. "She's also the one who told me that hiding who you are doesn't honor the God who made you." The words hung in the air between us. I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly replaced by something else entirely. "Gabriel, I know this is complicated," he said quietly. "I know we're both trying to figure out how to be faithful and honest at the same time. But I also know that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that first Sunday." I looked across the small table at him. This man who spoke about God with such tenderness, who wrestled with faith the same way I did, who was brave enough to say out loud what I'd been feeling for weeks. "I can't stop thinking about you either," I whispered. We didn't kiss that night, but when he walked me to my car, his hand brushed mine, and the touch sent electricity up my arm. I drove home with my heart racing, and a smile I couldn't shake. Church felt different now. Every hymn seemed to carry new meaning. Every prayer felt more personal. I was aware of Gabriel's presence in a way that made concentration difficult. When he preached about love, real love, the kind that transforms and challenges and heals, his eyes would find mine in the congregation, and I felt like he was speaking directly to my heart. After service, Mrs. Chin cornered me by the fellowship hall. "You and our youth minister seem to be getting along well," she said with a knowing smile. "He's been very welcoming." I replied carefully, "Good. He needs friends. This job can be lonely, especially for someone his age." She patted my arm. "We're glad you're both here." Later that afternoon, Gabriel called. "Want to go for a hike? There's a trail up to Miller's Ridge that has an incredible view." The October woods were ablaze with color, and the trail was steep enough to make conversation sporadic, but the silences between us felt comfortable, natural. At the summit, we sat on a fallen log overlooking the valley. Millbrook spread out below us like a toy village. "It's beautiful up here," I said. "I come here when I need to think. Or pray. Sometimes they're the same thing." I turned to look at him. "What do you pray about?" "Lots of things. Wisdom, courage, understanding." He was quiet for a moment. "Whether it's possible to serve God authentically while being true to yourself." "And what answer do you get?" He smiled, but there was sadness in it. That love is love. That God doesn't make mistakes. That sometimes the church and God want different things. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. When the evening chill began to set in, Gabriel offered me his jacket. It smelled like him, clean soap and something indefinably warm. "Thank you," I said, and meant it for more than just a jacket. The church's annual harvest festival was a bigger deal than I'd expected. The entire community turned out for the pumpkin carving, apple cider, and live music. Gabriel had been running around all day coordinating volunteers and managing the children's activities. But he still found time to seek me out. "Having fun?" he asked, appearing at my elbow as I watched the bluegrass band set up. "More than I expected. You've done an amazing job organizing this." Team effort. Though I may collapse the moment everyone goes home. "Need any help?" He gave me a grateful look. "Actually, yes. Could you help me move some tables back into the fellowship hall? Most of the volunteers have families to get home to." We worked together as the crowd thinned, stacking chairs and folding tables in comfortable companionship. The last few families were gathering their things when Gabriel's hand brushed mine as we both reached for the same table leg. This time, neither of us pulled away. "Ezra," he said softly, "I know this is complicated. I know that too." We stood there in the darkening churchyard, hands still touching, both of us aware that we were approaching a line that, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. "What do we do?" I asked. "We figure out together," he said, "if you want to." I turned my hand palm up, letting our fingers intertwine properly. "I want to." The first real storm of the season hit on a Tuesday night, and I woke to find my power out and a tree blocking my driveway. My phone had just enough battery left to call Gabriel. "Don't even think about trying to move that branch yourself," he said when I described the situation. "I'll be right over." He arrived with coffee, chainsaw, and work gloves, looking ridiculously capable in flannel and jeans. It took us 2 hours to clear the debris, working mostly in comfortable silence punctuated by the occasional direction or shared joke. "Come on," he said when we'd finished. "You can't stay here without power. The church has a generator, and I've got a spare room. I don't want to impose." "Ezra, you're not imposing." His apartment felt even cozier by lamplight. He made grilled cheese sandwiches on a camping stove while I browsed his bookshelves, noting the interesting mix of theology, poetry, and fiction. "Mary Oliver," I said, pulling out a well-worn volume, one of my favorites. "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" I've been asking myself that question a lot lately. Any answers? I turned to look at him. This man who'd somehow become the center of my world in just a few short months. I think I'm starting to figure it out. We talked late into the night, sharing stories about our childhoods, our families, the paths that had brought us to this small Connecticut town. When I finally said I should get some sleep, Gabriel showed me to the guest room. "Thank you," I said, "for everything today. Thank you for letting me help." He hesitated in the doorway, and for a moment I thought he might say something else. Instead, he just smiled and said goodnight. But I lay awake for a long time, listening to him move around the apartment, aware of his presence in a way that made my skin feel too tight. Neither of us had anywhere to go for Thanksgiving. My family was in Oregon, his in Georgia, so we decided to cook together. Gabriel insisted on doing a traditional meal, despite it being just the two of us. "My grandmother's stuffing recipe is sacred," he said, showing me how to crumble the cornbread properly. "She'd haunt me if I didn't make it right." "Tell me about her," I said, working beside him at the small kitchen counter. His face softened. "She raised me after my parents died. Car accident when I was 8. She was this tiny southern woman who could make grown men cry with her disapproval. But she loved fiercely. When I told her I was gay, she just said, "Well, honey, God don't make no mistakes." And that was that. She sounded wonderful. She's the reason I went into ministry. She said I had a gift for helping people feel loved, and that was too important to waste. We worked in easy synchronization, our movements around each other becoming a kind of dance. When the timer went off of the turkey, Gabriel reached across me to turn off the oven, and suddenly we were very close, his chest against my back, his breath warm on my neck. "Ezra," he whispered. I turned in the circle of his arms, and we were even closer now, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, close enough to count his eyelashes. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly. Instead of answering, I reached up and traced that small scar through his eyebrow with my fingertip, He closed his eyes and leaned into the touch. More than okay, I whispered. We stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the warm kitchen that smelled like turkey and possibility, both of us aware that everything was changing. The Christmas season at St. Mark's was beautiful and overwhelming. Gabriel threw himself into planning the pageant, organizing the caroling and coordinating the gift drive for local families. I helped where I could, but mostly I watched him shine, watched him create magic for the children and comfort for the adults who needed it. We'd grown closer since Thanksgiving, though we still hadn't defined what we were to each other. There were lingering looks, accidental touches, conversations that went late into the night. The tension between us was becoming harder to ignore. One evening after pageant rehearsal, we found ourselves alone in the sanctuary, cleaning up scattered props and music sheets. I love this time of year, Gabriel said, looking up at the stained glass windows that caught the last of the evening light. There's something about the idea of incarnation, God choosing to be vulnerable, to be human, that gets me every time. Even with all the stress of organizing everything, especially then, it reminds me that the sacred shows up in the ordinary stuff, in community, in caring for each other. He was kneeling to pick up some sheet music that had fallen, and something about the way the light fell across his face made my chest tight with affection. Gabriel. He looked up at me, and whatever he saw in my expression made him go very still. I need you to know, I said quietly, that these past few months have been the happiest I've ever been. He stood slowly, never taking his eyes off mine. Ezra, I know it's complicated. I know there are things we need to figure out, but I needed you to know that. He crossed the space between us in 2 steps, reaching out to cup my face in his hands. It's been the happiest I've ever been too, he whispered. This time, when he leaned down, I met him halfway. Our first kiss was soft, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When we broke apart, we stayed close, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. What happens now? I asked. Now we figure out together, he said. Just like we said we would. The Christmas Eve service was beautiful. Gabriel's sermon about love showing up in unexpected places, about grace being bigger than fear, felt like it was written just for us. When he caught my eye during the candlelight portion of the service, his smile was radiant. Afterward, as people filed out into the snowy night, several parishioners approached me. Lovely service, Mrs. Patterson said. Gabriel seems so happy lately. It's wonderful to see. He's doing beautiful work here. I replied, yes, he is. And it's clear he values your friendship. We're all grateful you become part of our community. When the church was finally empty except for us, Gabriel found me in the fellowship hall, putting away the last of the coffee cups. Thank you for helping, he said. Thank you for including me. We stood there among the folding tables and leftover cookies, both of us aware that this was a moment that mattered. I have something for you, Gabriel said quietly, pulling a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. Inside was a slim volume of poetry, Mary Oliver's Devotions. Look at the inscription, he said softly, in his careful handwriting. For Ezra, who taught me that faith and love aren't opposites. Christmas 2024. Gabriel, I breathe. I have something else, he said, but it's not something I can wrap. What is it? A promise that whatever happens, whatever we have to figure out, we'll do it together. That this, he gestured between us, isn't something I'm willing to give up. I set the book carefully on a nearby table and stepped closer to him. I promise to, I said, all of it. When he kissed me this time, it was with the certainty of someone who'd made a choice and was at peace with it. We spent New Year's Eve at Gabriel's apartment, cooking dinner and talking about the year ahead. The conversation turned to practical matters. How to navigate our relationship in a small town, what it meant for Gabriel's position at the church, how open we could afford to be. Pastor Williams is progressive, Gabriel said, curled against me on his couch. But some of the congregation, I know, we'll figure out. Are you worried? I considered the question seriously. about some things, but not about us. Not anymore. He lifted his head to look at me. No, no, this feels too right to be wrong. As midnight approached, we stood on a small balcony, watching fireworks bloom over the distant hills. When the clock struck 12, Gabriel pulled me close. Happy New Year, Ezra. Happy New Year. Our kiss tasted like champagne and possibility. Winter deepened, and so did our relationship. We'd fallen into comfortable routines. Morning coffee before work, evening walks when the weather permitted, quiet dinners at one of our apartments. The congregation seemed to accept our friendship without question, though I sometimes caught speculative looks from the more observant parishioners. One Sunday after service, Pastor Williams asked to speak with us both. I wanted to thank you, he said once we were in his office. The youth program has really flourished under your leadership, Gabriel. And Ezra, your involvement in the book club and volunteer work has been wonderful. Thank you, Gabriel said carefully. I also wanted you both to know that I'm aware you become close friends, and I'm glad. Ministry can be isolating, especially for someone your age, Gabriel. It's good to see you building meaningful connections in the community. There was something in his tone that suggested he understood more than he was saying, but his smile was warm and genuine. This is a place where love is celebrated in all its forms, he continued. I hope you both know that. After we left his office, Gabriel and I walked to the parking lot in thoughtful silence. Do you think he knows? I asked. I think Pastor Williams sees more than most people realize, Gabriel said. And I think he just gave us his blessing. That evening, we talked about what it might mean to be more open, to stop being quite so careful about how we looked at each other in public, to let our relationship be what was becoming. I don't want to hide, Gabriel said. Not anymore. Are you sure? Your career. My career is serving God and serving people. If I can't do that authentically, what's the point? I kissed him then, there in his kitchen with the winter wind rattling the windows, and tasted his courage along with his love. April brought warmth and the beginning of new life. The church grounds bloomed with daffodils and early tulips, and Gabriel seemed to bloom along with them. His sermons took on new depth. His work with the youth group became even more impactful, and his joy was evident to everyone who knew him. We'd grown more comfortable with public affection. Nothing dramatic, but we no longer carefully avoided sitting together during church events, no longer stepped apart when someone approached us in conversation. The congregation seemed to adjust without comment. One evening, we were helping with the church's community garden when Mrs. Chin approached us. You two have such a wonderful partnership, she said, admiring the rows of vegetables we've been planting. It's lovely to see two people who complement each other so well. After she walked away, Gabriel and I exchanged a look. Partnership, he said thoughtfully. Is that what we have? Among other things. He reached out to brush a smudge of dirt from my cheek, the gesture casual and tender. What would you call it? I considered the question seriously. We'd never used the word boyfriends. It seemed too small for what we built together. Relationship felt clinical. Love affair was too dramatic. I'd call it love, I said simply. Gabriel's smile was radiant. I'd call it that too. That night, we made love for the first time, slow and careful and reverent, like a prayer made flesh. Afterward, lying tangled together in his bed, Gabriel traced patterns on my chest with his fingertip. I love you, he whispered into the darkness. I love you too. It felt like the most natural thing in the world to say. Summer brought the church's annual retreat to a camp in the Berkshire Mountains. It was 3 days of workshops, worship, and fellowship, and Gabriel had asked me to help lead a session on faith and literature. On the last evening, there was a campfire service under the stars. Gabriel spoke about community, about how we become our truest selves when we allow ourselves to be known and loved by others. His words carried weight because everyone could see how he'd transformed over the past year, how he'd grown into himself, how his ministry had deepened. After the service, we walked down to the lake together, away from the lingering conversations around the dying fire. "This has been a good year," I said, settling beside him on the dock. "The best year," he agreed. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle lap of water against the shore and the distant sound of laughter from the campfire. "I have something to tell you," Gabriel said eventually. My heart did a small skip. "What is it?" "Pastor Williams is retiring next year. The board has asked me to consider applying for the position." "Gabriel, that's wonderful. You'd be perfect." I said I'd think about it, but I told them I'd only be interested if I could serve authentically, all of who I am. I turned to look at him in the moonlight. "What did they say?" "They said they'd get back to me." He smiled. But Mrs. Patterson was on the committee, and she just winked at me. We lay back on the dock, looking up at the stars scattered across the clear mountain sky. "I keep thinking about that Mary Oliver quote," Gabriel said. "What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" And I plan to love you. I plan to serve God and serve people. I plan to build something beautiful in this little town with this incredible man who walked into my church one Sunday morning and changed everything. I rolled onto my side to face him properly. "Is that a proposal?" "Not yet," he said, smiling. "But it's a promise, a commitment, a declaration that this is my life, and you're the person I want to share it with." I kissed him then, under the stars and the infinite sky, tasting his certainty and his love and his courage. When we broke apart, we stayed close, breathing the same air, sharing the same space. "I love you, Gabriel Morrison." I whispered. "I love you too, Ezra Reed." Later, walking back to the cabins hand in hand, I thought about how far we'd come from that first Sunday when I noticed him 3 pews ahead. We'd found each other in a place dedicated to faith and community, and we built something that honored both. We'd learned that love and devotion weren't opposites, that serving God didn't require hiding who we were, that grace was big enough to hold all of us. As we reached the cabin, Gabriel stopped and pulled me close one more time. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Home," I said. "How it's not a place. It's a person." "In that case," he said, "I'm home too." The future stretched ahead of us, full of possibility and promise. There would be challenges. There always were. But we'd face them together. This man who taught me that faith and love were the same thing, and the community that had embraced us both. In the morning, we'd return to Millbrook, to our regular lives and Sunday services and Wednesday book clubs. But we'd return as ourselves, fully, authentically, joyfully ourselves. And that felt like the greatest miracle of all.